Every fall, elderberry syrup shows up in medicine cabinets everywhere. The go-to natural remedy the moment a cold starts creeping in. But here's something most people reaching for that bottle don't know. Eat that same berry raw, straight off the bush, and it can make you sick. Same berry, two completely different outcomes. We'll get to why later, because first, there's a bigger question worth asking. Does the popular version, the syrup, actually do anything at all? Respect tradition, verify with evidence. Quick note first. This is education, not medical advice. If you're pregnant or nursing, managing an autoimmune condition, taking immune-suppressing or diabetes medication, talk with a qualified healthcare provider before adding concentrated elderberry to your routine. So what exactly is elderberry? Most of what you'll find in stores comes from Sambucus and nigra, the European elderberry. There's a related North American cousin, Sambucus canadensis, showing up in some products too, and it's worth being upfront. The research we're about to walk through is almost all done on the European species. That doesn't mean the American one is different. It just means we don't actually know yet, so let's not pretend otherwise. Worth checking the label on whatever's in your cabinet, since most don't say which one you're actually getting. Botanically, elderberry sits in the family Apothecary now. It used to be grouped with honeysuckles in Caprifoliaceae, but DNA evidence moved it. Same story this show has told for nearly every herb so far. What people actually use is the ripe berry cooked into syrup or jam, or the dried flower steeped into tea. And here's a detail worth holding on to because we're coming back to it. Cooked is not a suggestion. It's the entire reason anyone can eat this berry safely at all. More on that later. Before the syrup bottle, there was the tree itself, and people have been reaching for it for a long time. Archaeological evidence puts elder cultivation as far back as 3,000 to 4,000 BCE in Italy and Switzerland. Later, in European folklore, the tree got its own guardian. The elder mother, a spirit believed to live inside it. Tradition held you had to ask her permission before cutting any branches or risk bad luck. That's folklore, not medicine. But it tells you how deep this plant runs in folk tradition, long before anyone ever ran a clinical trial. Every claim today gets rated on our confidence scales, 1 to 5 stars, based on how strong the actual human evidence is. So, back to that question from the top. Does elderberry actually do anything? The honest answer is, it depends what you're asking it to do. Elderberry gets used for 2 different jobs, stopping a cold before it starts and helping you get over one faster once you're already sick. Those are 2 different questions with 2 different answers, and mixing them together is where most of the confusion starts. For prevention, stopping you from getting sick in the first place. The one study that actually tested this, in over 300 travelers on long flights, found no significant difference in who got sick at all. 1 star, insufficient evidence. For treatment, once you're already sick, several small trials found people recovered roughly 2 to 4 days faster than with a placebo. That's a real, if modest, signal. 2 stars, emerging evidence. Think of it like grabbing an umbrella after it's already started raining. It might help you get through the storm a little faster and a little drier. It was never going to stop the rain from falling in the first place. So what's actually happening inside the berry? Elderberries are loaded with compounds called anthocyanins, the same family of pigments that give the berry its deep purple color. In lab studies, they act as antioxidants and appear to help regulate the immune response. That's real chemistry, confirmed in human volunteers who absorbed and processed these compounds after eating elderberry. But here's the honest limit. Most of what these compounds actually do inside a sick person, beyond the lab dish, hasn't been directly proven. The color is real. the chemistry is real, and the human outcome data is still catching up. And here's a reason to read health headlines carefully. In 2019, a university put out a press release claiming elderberry helps minimize flu symptoms. The actual study behind it? Cells in a lab dish, no people involved at all, and it was partly funded by the company that makes a leading elderberry syrup, which had actually asked to be left out of the announcement. Once that came out, the university pulled the release, and a bioethicist called the whole episode an appalling misrepresentation. That's not a reason to distrust all elderberry research. It's a reason to ask who funded the headline before you believe it. So here's a question you may have actually heard floating around, especially since 2020. Does elderberry cause a cytokine storm? Let's actually answer it, instead of just reacting to how scary that sounds. It started with something real. A lab study found elderberry stimulates certain immune cells to produce cytokines, the signaling molecules your immune system uses to fight off a virus. That's a normal, targeted response. Somewhere on the internet, stimulates the immune system quietly turned into causes a dangerous overstimulation. And a cytokine storm, a term for a real, sometimes serious immune overreaction, isn't the same thing at all. When researchers actually reviewed the immune data, they found no evidence that elderberry overstimulates the immune systems in a healthy person. So, is that the whole story? Genuine pivot, not a twist reveal. Almost, but not quite. There's a separate, narrower finding worth knowing. In 2024, a study of people with certain autoimmune skin conditions, specifically dermatomyositis and cutaneous lupus, found a real association between elderberry use and flare-ups in a meaningful share of those patients. That is not the cytokine storm myth. It's a specific caution for a specific group of people based on a specific finding, and lumping it in with the myth we just walked through would be its own kind of misinformation. So practically, how is this actually taken? The studies use a measured syrup, about 15 milliliters 4 times a day for 5 days once you're sick, or a standardized capsule. Same rule as always. A measured dose in a study is not automatically the same as a spoonful from a homemade batch. Good for the kitchen, just not the same thing science actually tested. Which brings us to safety. Autoimmune caution. If you live with an autoimmune skin condition like dermatomyositis or cutaneous lupus, or have a family history of one, that's the specific finding from a few minutes ago. Worth a conversation with your provider before adding elderberry. Medication interactions. Elderberry may theoretically work against immune-suppressing medications like corticosteroids or the drugs used after an organ transplant. If the whole point of the medication is to calm the immune system down, stimulating it in the other direction is worth a conversation with your provider. There's also a separate, milder signal. Small human research suggests elderberry may modestly affect blood sugar, which means combining it with diabetes medications like metformin or insulin could theoretically add up. Neither interaction has been tested in a dedicated human trial, but both are reasonable enough to flag. Pregnancy and nursing. Here's an honest one. We simply don't have safety data either way for pregnancy or breastfeeding. Not evidence of danger, just an absence of evidence, which is its own reason for caution. And now finally, back to where we started. Remember that raw versus cooked paradox? Here's the answers. Raw and unripe elderberries, along with the leaves, stems, bark, and seeds, contain a compound called Sambucus, which your body can convert into cyanide. Ripening actually lowers how much of it the berry contains, and heat destroys most of what's left, which is exactly why the cooked ripe berry and the raw, unripe one behave like two different foods. The most documented case, in 1983, a group of 11 people in California pressed juice from whole, raw elderberries, leaves, stems, and all, and 8 of them got sick within hours. Nausea, vomiting, cramping. 1 dizzy and numb enough to be kept in the hospital overnight. Recovery came within a day for all of them, and their blood cyanide levels actually came back normal, meaning the real mechanism may be more complicated than cyanide poisoning, headlines suggest. I couldn't find a single confirmed death from elderberry in the modern medical literature, so let's be precise instead of dramatic. This is a real, unpleasant, usually short-lived illness, not a poison you in your sleep story. Cooking breaks the toxin down completely. That's not a recipe preference. It's the entire reason this berry is safe to eat at all. So here's the honest scorecard. For shortening a cold once you're sick, 2 stars, a real if modest effect, built on small trials that all point the same direction, even if none of them are huge. For stopping you from getting sick in the first place, 1 star, simply not supported by the one study that actually tested it. The cytokine storm myth? Not true for a healthy person, but a real, separate, narrower caution if you live with certain autoimmune conditions. And raw is never the answer, no matter how tempting the bush looks. Cooked is the whole point. Which leaves us with the idea to carry out of here. Elderberry has a real modest case for feeling better a little faster once you're already sick, not for dodging the cold in the first place, and not the immune superfood some corners of the internet have turned it into. Respect the tradition, cook the berry, and let the evidence, not the hype, tell you what it's actually good for. If that's the kind of grounded, honest herbalism you've been looking for, subscribe and grow with us. And next time, ashwagandha, the trendy adaptogen everyone's taking for stress. Does the science actually back up the hype? Respect tradition, verify with evidence. See you next time.